me, your host, Sean Lynn, in the pub for a Dram with friends, where we talk about faith, family, food, and fun. Pull up a chair and I'll pour you a drink. Episode 5. We pour a dram with our good friend Mike MacDonald, listening to God's call for your life. Pull up a chair as I pour us a drink. This is our first recorded episode, so please be understanding. All right, so here we go. And welcome to our first episode of A Dram with Friends. I am very blessed today to have Michael MacDonald all the way from Mexico joining me. And Michael is a missionary down in Mexico, and we're looking forward to having a dram and talking about what he does down there. So first, Michael, I need some help.
Yep.
MacDonald, my limited research. Is it an Isle whiskey? That's where he started, or were they Highlands people? So,
all I heard when I was growing up that we came from a clan of sheep stealers, and they kicked us out of Scotland, and we ended up in Nova Scotia. That's where I was born, and then later I went out to be a teacher in Calgary.
Oh, there you go. Well,
I fell in love with the West.
I think because I'll start with one of my best whiskeys that I got on hand, and then it's an AnCnoc 18, and we'll have a wee dram of that. And in my research, I learned that a dram is only 1/8 of an ounce, so I might have slightly more because I don't have that good of a pour yet. So I'm working on it though.
Wow.
What are you
You
drinking?
had my permission, especially since you're at home and not driving.
What are you drinking, Michael?
I just made, because you insisted, a rum and coke. I told you I'm from rural Nova Scotia, and growing up, the only thing there was rum and water. But now, I'm not a great fan, probably, of rum. And a friend of mine from Colombia, who's married to a Mexican, gave me a bottle of Colombian rum. So cheers to Canada from Colombia and Mexico.
Cheers. Well, welcome. And I'm quite excited about hearing these stories. I was talking to Father Fred Monk, and he said, look, if you want to interview somebody, you got to interview Mike, because so for those that don't know, Mike is working for the Diocese of Calgary for Mission Mexico, and but there's so much more to the story than just down there, isn't there? He said I have to ask you about stuff that you were doing way back. So maybe you talked about being a teacher in Calgary. Give us a little background on who Mike MacDonald is.
Well, I grew up in a very Catholic family in Nova Scotia. Spent a couple of years in a seminary in Ottawa thinking I might want to be a priest, but then left and decided I would sooner be a teacher. That a teacher can raise questions. Priests back 50 years ago had to give the answers. I wasn't sure I had them all, but I like raising questions. So I became a teacher, and then in the late 70s was offered a teaching job teaching religious studies at St. Mary's High School in Calgary. I went out, I loved it, and I thought I had my life made. But back in 1979, I met a priest from Canada who had formerly taught at St. Mary's and had retired to Mexico. And I invited him to speak to my class. He did. And while he was talking to the class, he said, why don't you come down and visit me in the summer? And some of the students said, yeah, Mr. MacDonald, take us. I thought it would be a good trip. So in 1979, we came down for about 7 weeks to the mountains right here where I presently live of Guerrero in Mexico. And The priest, Father Lawrence Moran, was from the congregation of St. Basil, and he was working here. He had chosen this area because it's the poorest area in the country. Where I live, Tlapa, it's considered the heart of the mountain. It's a city of about 90,000, and it has 700 villages around it, 3 different native cultures, and different languages and different ways of doing things, and mostly dirt roads and mud roads right now in the rainy season. And the students and I loved it. We came again in 1980, 81, and 82. Father Moran said to me, Mike, I'm getting old. I can't stay here by myself. Could you stay with me? And I figured, well, he's old. He's going to die soon, and he deserves his dying wish. So I said, yes. I forgot how stubborn he was. He didn't die until 25 years later. And so I've basically mostly been here in Mexico since 1982. And I've done a lot of different things, trying to make ends meet and to be able to be here. And since 2013, I have been employed by Mission Mexico as their on-site coordinator for the projects they sponsor. So I love it here. The people are the greatest in the world. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I wouldn't go anywhere other than here. And if God is good, this is where I'm going to die.
Wow. That's commitment. That's incredible. That's
No, it isn't. That's being blessed.
Yes, and that's where I think part of the problem today is people don't realize the blessings that are there for them, that God has blessed them wherever they are called in their life. And I was riding on my motorcycle to visit our new shrine here in Canmore and go to mass, and it was absolutely beautiful, riding through the mountains, just reflecting on just how blessed I am to be living where I am, even though you may have heard on the news that people don't like the cops anymore, and they're burning Catholic churches. But I'm so blessed just to be in Calgary, in Canada, living the life that I'm living. And unfortunately, we make so much of a pastime of complaining, right?
Right. Well, I agree. You're very blessed, but I'm sorry, but I get the award in that one. Imagine there's something like 36 million Canadians. And why is it at 36 million, I am the only Canadian here in these mountains, living, loving, sharing good times and bad times with the most noble people on the face of the earth, the poorest people on the face of the earth, but the greatest people, God's people. And I've learned so much from them, and I continue learning every day. So when you talk about me being a missionary, I just want to stress that being a missionary is a two-way street. The people here have taught me and continue to teach me more about faith and love and hope than I, with a degree in theology, could ever imagine I might teach them.
And that's such a powerful message for people to hear. And it sounds a lot like St. Francis Xavier, who went to India and fell in love with the people, and you know, they didn't want to let him go. So maybe in your will you can make sure your hand at least makes it to Canada, so that we can put it on display in one of the churches when you're canonized.
Well, I'm sorry, but I've told my brothers and sisters in Canada, I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters in different areas of Canada, that if I die down here, don't be stupid enough to try to bring me home to Canada. That there's lots of people here that will find a place to put me away for eternity. And then I've told the Mexicans here, if I die here, don't worry about burying me in a graveyard or anything. I walk by the local garbage dump every day, and there's tons of dogs, and they're welcome to throw me into that dump. I'm going to go out with a smile no matter what happens. And where I'm going next, I'll leave that in God's hands.
That's amazing. Father Fred said to ask you about some of the exciting stories, like you just getting out of was it San Salvador or just missing?
Well, Father Fred exaggerates, and usually I don't tell those stories. He must have given me more than one or two rum and cokes if he's heard some of my stories from there. In 1989, I was living here in Mexico, but I got a message from a friend who said that the Independent Human Rights Commission of El Salvador was looking for people to go down to volunteer with them. And the director of the committee, whom I had met at a time that he was in exile in Mexico, wanted me to go and work with them. And I was very happy here in Mexico, but I knew that the war in El Salvador in 1989 was at a very difficult point. And I don't think I really wanted to go. But over prayer and reflection and talking, I decided that, okay, I've talked the talk. Here's an opportunity to walk the walk, put my life a little at risk. And so I went to El Salvador. And as it turned out, the Human Rights Commission said, Mike, we can't get out to investigate any human rights violations in the countryside. We're on a blacklist. So here, we want you to go to the armed forces with this letter from a little newspaper in San Francisco and present yourself as a journalist. And that way, you can do the investigating for us out in the countryside. So it worked. And for what was supposed to be at least a year, but only turned out to be about 4 months, it sounds like a movie. I was an undercover member of the Independent Human Rights Commission of El Salvador, but posing as a journalist. And so anytime I had to go out to the countryside, I got a beep on a beeper that I carried on my belt. Beep. If it beeped once, there were no cell phones then, I had to go to the Baptist hospital, and there'd be somebody from the commission telling me where to go and what cover story to give at the military roadblocks. I couldn't go and tell them I was going to investigate a human rights violation. If it was 2 beeps, it was Mr. Donut. 3 beeps, McDonald's.
Wow.
That was my life. And it seemed different at the time, but you kind of fall into it. And things were going good until on November 16th, there was the murder of the 6 Jesuit priests and 2 women from the Jesuit University in El Salvador. And the members of the Human Rights Commission were in hiding at that time. But the day of that massacre, I got a beep, and I took the director of the commission up to the university all day, then took him back to where he was in hiding nearby. Then the next day went again, the next day again. Then the public funeral was on a Sunday. And then on the Monday, the government told me I had 5 days to leave the country.
Oh, wow.
So I had no choice. I had to come back, and I came back to Mexico. Now, getting out of the country, Father Fred, that was an interesting story. It was very interesting, but I don't know if you had the time to hear it. I don't know if I can be very concise.
Well, just a second. Let's see. My Dram is looking fine. The nose on it is beautiful. I'm gonna just cut it a little bit with my angel dropper here. One guy told me it's 3 drops, one for the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So I'll continue sipping my whiskey as I listen to the story, because I think it's going to be fascinating.
Well, I haven't told it for a long time. See if I can remember. I got ordered out of the country on a Monday. I informed the director of the Human Rights Commission on Tuesday, and he said, go back to the immigration office and argue with them that your bosses don't want you to leave, but if they want you to leave, you have to leave. Because we have hidden, I was supposedly a journalist, and journalists live in half-decent neighborhoods, rent half-decent places. And I had, in the house that I was renting, all the records for the many years that the Human Rights Commission had existed. Their offices had been blown up so often that they needed a safe house. And that's where they were. And so the director didn't want the police showing up to pick me up if I didn't leave the country and discovering all those records. So anyway, I went on Wednesday, the immigration, they told me, no, you got to get out of here or you're going to prison. So I went and I bought a ticket at a travel agency to leave. Now, I couldn't leave until Saturday morning because that was a very tense time in the fighting, and a lot of the rich people, the guerrillas, had the city of San Salvador, the capital, partly surrounded. And everybody was leaving. So I bought my ticket, they wrote out the ticket, and I paid for it. Then on Thursday, a roommate I had, who was also from the United States and working with the commission, who hadn't been ordered out of the country, said to me, Mike, can you bring this box of photographs and mail it from Mexico to my son in the States? And I said, sure. But in the afternoon, he left the house. And I thought, well, he's got this shoebox all wrapped up with tape. But if they stop me at the airport and ask me to open it, I want to know what's in it. So I opened it, and what was in it was a lot of, the gentleman wanted to write a book after his experience volunteering in El Salvador. And so he kept, with a mini tape player, running dialogue of what he had been doing every day. And it mentioned names and places that would have meant the death of people if that fell into the hands of the military of El Salvador at that time. So I got in touch with the director of the commission, and I told him, and he said, look, go through the tapes and wipe them. And anything that's half innocent, you can leave it. And go through everything, and anything that's innocent, you can take it in the box. Don't tell this guy that you discovered that he's got all this stuff that could mean people's lives. So anyway, Friday night, there was a curfew from 6 to 6. And before 6 o'clock, a member of the Human Rights Commission that I hadn't seen for a month, Francisco, showed up at our house. And he was deathly pale, even though he was the most dark-skinned member of the commission. And he says, Mike, do you know anything about my wife and 2 daughters? And I said, no. And he says, I went there, and the neighbors said that they were led away by some people with very short hair. And he immediately thought death squads trying to find him. So he stayed the night with me, and he had no money, and he had dirty clothes. And I only had a backpack that I was going to take to the airport on Saturday morning to come back to Mexico. And I had money that I had been planning to be in El Salvador at least a year. So before the night was over, God made me talk to Francisco and say, Francisco, I'm leaving the country tomorrow. Look, take my backpack with all my clothes. You're the same size as me. Take all my money except for a $20 bill I'm going to hold on to. And he did. So the next morning, this friend of mine took me out to the airport, 40 kilometers away from the city. I walk into the airport and I go up to the TACA counter to the airline, and I show my ticket to the guy, and the guy says, we're sorry, you're not on the plane today. I said, what do you mean? There's my ticket. He says, yeah, the agency gave you the ticket, but they never called to confirm that you were going to come. And I said, well, look, here's my ticket. You see, it's been paid. Please put me on. He says, I can't, it's a full flight. So I took out the $20 bill and I slid it across the table, and I said, look, sir, you see my passport is Canada? Yes. And I have a ticket only to Mexico City? Yes. Well, the reason for that is that my father is dying in Canada. And I got a call, and I only had enough money to buy a ticket to Mexico City. But if I don't get to Mexico City, there's a friend waiting for me with the adjoining ticket to get me to Canada. If I don't get to Mexico City, I'll lose the flight to Canada. I may lose the chance to see my dying father. I didn't tell him that my father had died 4 years earlier. And please, whatever you can do, try to get me on the flight. He took the $20 bill, slipped it into his pocket, and said, I'll see what I can do. So I go in and sit down, and every once in a while I look over, and he looks at me and shakes his head. The flight was going to leave at 8:30. At 8:30, it said, last call, all remaining passengers for Tata flight to Mexico City. I look over and the guy says, no, at 8:35, I'm thinking, okay, I'm dead. I'm supposed to leave the country. I don't have a penny. I'm still in the country. What am I going to do? And over the loudspeaker came, Mike MacDonald, please report to the TACA counter. I go and the guy says, one woman didn't show up. You can take the seat, but run because the flight is already 5 minutes late. So I go running. I've got this shoebox. That's all I've got in a little backpack. And I get to customs and they know I'm late for that flight, so they don't look at anything. They say, go, go, hurry. And I get on the plane and everybody gives me a dirty look because I'm the guy that made them delay their flight. But the flight pulled out and I got to Mexico City and I had friends that had told me they were going to be waiting for me there. So even though I arrived without a penny in my pocket, I could resume my life again and things went on. So God was good to me that day. Don't judge me on lying, please, for that.
Oh, no.
But it worked. And
I'm
God got me out.
I'm sure you've gone to reconciliation since then. And I was just reading today about in James about judging, and it says not to do that. So I think
I'm not too worried.
I'm not too worried either. So
actually, I think it was the Holy Spirit. Like, how do you think of something like that on the spur of the moment when you're standing in front of the guy? So
good for you, and we are very glad that you did make it out. And
yeah, so am I.
And God definitely has been working in your life, and it's amazing to hear you say yes. And I think this is going to be a great interview for men, especially our young men who want to do something that they're called to, and being open to listening to God gets lost quite often in today's world. So thank you for sharing that. So
well, I've kind of got this feeling or belief, theory, whatever, faith, that you use the word calling. I think sometimes I prefer invitation, because whatever happens, God ain't gonna leave me alone. And so if I had opted to go somewhere else, God's still going to be there, and there's still going to be God's work to do there. So if I had stayed being a teacher in Calgary, which I loved being, and I thought it was my life until Father Moran decided to get stubborn and live so long. And then Father Fred, of course. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Father Fred, the founder of Mission Mexico. He asked me to work with them just at a time when I was thinking, okay, to make ends meet, I can't be in Mexico. And at that very moment, he says, Mike, we need somebody down there. Would you be our man? Now, I'm 69 years old. Living most of my life down here, I didn't put into much of a pension fund in Canada. And the pension fund I put in when I was a teacher in Calgary, I withdrew that in 1985 because I was broke and wanted to stay down here. And I figured God would be good to me, let me die before I was 65. He didn't. I'm still here. But the pension fund that I do get in Canada would allow me to be here even if I wasn't working with Mission Mexico. That's why I hope and plan to be here. The advantage of working with Mission Mexico is that there are thousands of very poor people who benefit because of a hand up from Mission Mexico. Not a handout, but trying to transform lives there little by little, mostly in the area of health and education. And so I feel like I'm the blessed person among the Mission Mexico team and the Calgary Diocese team, because I get to see the smiles. I get to see the people walk out of the hospital healthy again because of a little support from Mission Mexico. Those smiles, those thank yous, those hugs of gratitude, there's no way my words can pass that on to the people of the Diocese of Calgary who support Mission Mexico. But the people down here I know are praying for them, and I am praying for them, and I just hope, and I know that in the long run, it's all meant to be. So anyway, I talk too much.
And
I don't get to talk English.
We're definitely going to have another Dram down the future, because I'm guessing you've got a few more stories from your 69 years of being on this earth and trying to follow God's plan. So right now, the one thing that I didn't get done before we started this episode was I'm trying to figure out a tagline to close my show with, because I noticed all the podcasts and everything, they all have taglines for closing the show, and I'm trying to think of one that would be appropriate. So,
oh gosh, I'll leave that up to you. I'm not even sure what a tagline is. I promise this is the first time that I've ever done. I don't even know the name of this program that you sent down to tell me to click on. I've never done a Zoom in my life.
This is a Google Meet that we're using.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sean.
And so the theme of the show is we talk about faith, family, food, and fun. So I will work on that closing, and I got to throw in St. Joseph somewhere because he's always my buddy, and he's
my second name is Michael Joseph MacDonald. So
there you go. Well, I'm Sean Patrick Joseph Lynn. So we're and my family's originally from the Scotland area, so I'm just trying to learn a bit more about my heritage with a little whiskey and join a conversation with men and tell them that real men can do things in the world and have faith, and they can mesh, and that's where your faith doesn't hinder you from being a man in the world. It blesses you and encourages you and strengthens you to go out and do the mission that God's calling you to do.
I believe all that. I believe all that. Like I say, I look at my life as a blessing. Yes, there's tons of things I would change, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. There's things, I'm sorry for a lot of things I've done in my life that I've loused up on occasion and hurt people undoubtedly and stuff like that. But God has always been on the other side, mercifully saying, another step forward, MacDonald.
Yeah. And I, given the current circumstances, and I've been reflecting too in my 31 years of policing, have I handled every single call and interaction with people to the highest
the way
standard?
Jesus might have? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've fallen short. But God's been there to encourage me that, Sean, you don't have to be an ass. They're my kids. So yeah. So thank you again. I look forward
thank
to
you, Sean.
talking again in the near future. Please continue to pray for us up here, and we'll pray for you. And we'll see if we can't get the people from Calgary to fill up the piggy banks a little bit more to help out Mission Mexico. So,
well, thank you very much, Sean. God bless, and we'll be in touch. And thank you, people of Calgary and others. Bye.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode of A Dram with Friends. If you have any questions or suggestions, please email adram@godsquad.ca. And if you'd like to support us, go to godsquad.ca and look for the donate button. And also look for us soon on heroicmen.com.